And welcome to GMAT Score Booster. The purpose of this webinar is to help boost your GMAT score in 30 days or fewer. Essentially, this webinar is designed for folks who are somewhere in the middle of their preparation and are probably going to take the test in the next 20 to 50 days or so. And this webinar tells them how can we give that final push to their score, get that last 70 to 110 point score improvement overall. We will talk about a few things in this webinar. We'll talk about score plateau. We'll talk about the relationship between GMAT and ability. We'll talk about mocks. What are they designed for? When should you take them and how should you evaluate them briefly? And then we'll come up with a plan with regards to how can you boost your GMAT score in 3 weeks. This is a free webinar. It's quite heavily attended. We have upwards of 120 folks in the webinar right now, and to kind of understand, where you guys are in your preparation, how further along are you, and how far away are you from taking the test, we ask a couple of leading questions. The first one, top left hand corner, where are you in your preparation? If you haven't responded to this one, please do so. So based on the stats that I see over here, I see that the biggest segment over here has just started preparing. Then we have two almost equally sized segments, one which is in the middle of its preparation, where they're almost done in either one section, either quant or verbal, or they're in the last stage, which is they're taking mocks or have fewer than 30 days before their test. That's about 27-28% of you in each segment. Has another way to look at similar data, which is when do you plan to take the test. Two big segments, actually three big segments over here. One is a segment that plans to take the test in 31 to 45 days. The other one in 46 to 75, about 27% each again. Another big segment which is more than 75 days. Similarly sized segment between 16 to 30 days. And then we have a few folks who have their test right away, which is fewer than 15 days. If you have fewer than 15 days and the plan that we will talk about in this webinar, if you apply that plan, I think you can get a 30 to 50 point score improvement. If you have about 30 days, you can aim for that higher 70, 80 or 100 point score improvement. All right. With that, let's go into the presentation part. What's going to happen is the screen's going to shift for you. You're going to see a transition. It probably will take another 15 seconds or so for the screen to settle down, and once it settles down, you'd see a slide which says GMAT score booster, go from 630 to 730 in 30 days. How many of you see the slide? Select yes or no. The screen should have stabilized for you. All right, pretty much everyone sees the slide. For those of you who do not see the slide, if you would just join again, the problem either usually would sort out for itself by itself if either you join again or wait for another 5 seconds or so. And thank you very much for responding to the poll questions. So there are essentially 4 parts to this webinar. In the first part, we'll talk about, for those of you who are stuck at a certain point, we'll talk about score plateau. Why does it happen, and how can we overcome that score plateau? For those of you who haven't experienced score plateau and are wondering what it is, what really happens is when you start preparing for the test, initially, as you put in some time to prepare, your score improves, but beyond that, you reach a stage where you put in more time, but your score won't budge, and that's a score plateau. We're going to look at why does that happen, what's the relationship between score plateau and lack of core skills, and how can we, go beyond that plateau. Then we're going to look at the relationship between GMAT and ability, we'll define ability in the context of the GMAT, and we'll look at what are the various abilities that GMAT tests, and how can you create a predictive model for score improvement with regards to the test. We'll talk about timing, and let me ask this: how many of you think you have a timing problem? Yes, no? All right, but 80% of you think you have a timing problem. We're going to look at what is a timing problem and what causes it and what do you do about it. We'll also look at a few metrics with regards to timing that you should track throughout your preparation. And then we'll combine all these three things and we'll craft this 30-day plan. For those of you who tried GMAT Planner and basically said, I was looking for a plan, this is what you were looking for. But the foundation of that plan came through the data that GMAT Planner will provide you. Okay. So this webinar is essentially divided into three parts. In the first part, I'll spend about 12 minutes talk about who we are, what is it that we do. There are quite a few of you who are probably interacting with me or with any member of our team for the first time. So in this 12 minutes, we'll give you a brief introduction to who we are. Then we'll move right into the webinar where we'll talk about these 4 agenda items that we just discussed. And then towards the end, we'll have an open-ended Q&A where you can ask any question which are, a bit more specific in this nature. I have 150 students in this webinar right now, and throughout this webinar, we address a lot of questions. But one thing that I recommend is when you are in this webinar, please make sure that in the first and second parts, which is over here and over here, please keep your questions specific to the topics that are being talked about. When we get to this third part, which is the open-ended Q&A, you can ask any questions that are very specific to your use case, and I'll be happy to respond to this. What this allows us to do is keep the webinar on track, maintain this timing that we have listed out over here. And again, remember, you will get the recording, you will get our contact information. So if you have any questions that are not answered, you can always ask those questions. Also along with me, I have Devesh. Devesh is a marketing manager at e-GMAT. He's a graduate of NUS Singapore. He has a 750 on the GMAT. So he's quite capable in answering pretty much any question that you're going to put forward. So with that, let's start with the first part, 11 minutes for 11 minutes. So I'll give you a brief introduction to who we are and what is it that we do. e-GMAT as a company, we were formed about 5 years ago, and our goal was to help this one segment called non-natives ace the test. We define anyone who hasn't done his or her schooling from USA, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand as a non-native. And when I say schooling, it's K3 to K12. Since then, we've had upwards of 16,000 students from about 45 to 50 countries or so. And there are 2 achievements that I'm really proud of during this 5-year that we've had during this 5-year journey. First of all, we've been GMAT Club's most successful company. And when I say most successful, I say this based on 2 metrics. One, we are their most reviewed company. And secondly, our students have posted more success stories on GMAT Club's Share GMAT Experience forum than students from any other test prep company. The second thing is, if you look at the reviews by non-natives on GMAT Club, we account for about 70% of all their reviews by non-natives. I talked about being GMAT Club's most reviewed company. You can really see the number of reviews that we have versus the number of reviews that a few other prep companies have. Not only that, one thing that I'm really proud of is that how consistently our students have posted reviews. Now, a lot of students post reviews, and a lot of students have been posting reviews on GMAT Club for a lot of prep companies. And to make reviews more relevant, more useful for its students, what GMAT Club did was they changed their requirements to post a review in October of 2015. So since 2015, to post a review, a student had to satisfy one of these 4 requirements. The student either had to have a valid score report, or should have been an active member for upwards of 2 years, or should have been a very active member on the forum. Only 1% of members post 25 or more times on the forum, or should have had a valid .edu email address. Fundamentally, they should have taken their test and should have gone to a B school. So essentially what GMAT Club wanted to ensure was that reviews were provided by real people who had taken the course, taken the test, and had benefited from it. Since October of 2015, there were 402 reviews that were posted on forum, and this is from October to April. You can really see this timeline at the bottom right hand corner. More than half of those reviews were for e-GMAT or by e-GMAT students. And when you look at the number of reviews that were posted for other test prep companies, you can really see the numbers. So this is something that I'm really proud of. Another thing that I'm really proud of is that this new review process did not have an impact on the rate at which reviews were posted for e-GMAT. So to really look at the impact that this new review process had, we kind of compared two time periods. One when the review process was in place, which is October to April in the 2015 to 2016 time frame, and the second one is the same time frame in the 2014 to 2015 when this new review process was not in place. So what we found was the number of reviews for e-GMAT kind of remained almost the same. They went down by about 9%. But when we compared that for other test prep companies, the impact was a lot more. For Veritas Prep, the number went down by about 70%. For Magoosh, the number went down by about, I think it was upwards of 50% or so. And similarly for a few other prep companies. So a statistic that I'm really, really proud of. So why are our students so consistently successful? I think there are three key reasons for their success. The first is basically the way in which our students learn. As a company, we are completely focused on GMAT. This GMAT is the only test that we work on. And because of our focus, we invest a lot of money in content as well as technology. And we've developed this architecture called progressive learning architecture, where we make sure that you start at the right point, you get feedback every 20 to 25 minutes of your learning, and you're able to self-correct yourself. Essentially, what we try and do is we try and mimic a private tutor. I talked about this GMAT planner tool. This is something that we've invested for upwards of 2 to 3 months in, and as you go through this webinar, you'll kind of really see how it helps you plan better. It helps you give a more clear direction with regards to how to reach your target score. The second reason our students are very successful is the way in which we impart learning. Everything that we do is beautifully audio visual. What it really means is we not only engage your ability to read, but your audio as well as your visual cortex. Essentially, when you do that, you learn a lot better, and you're able to apply what you've learned a lot more effectively. And the third reason why our students are very successful is our focus on core skills. As you go through and we do some subject matter examples, you're going to look at the focus on core skills and how it helps you improve. So essentially, we offer two kinds of courses. The first kind of course is what we call as online or on-demand courses. Our on-demand courses are designed to be designed for students who want to study at their own pace, but are looking for a resource that is a lot more efficient than learning from books. They cover everything from the core foundation to the most advanced application. Examples of our on-demand courses are Verbal, Quant Online, GMAT Online, as well as our individual courses. The second kind of course that we offer is a live course. As the name suggests, a live course contains an on-demand course along with live instructor interaction. Our live courses come with a guaranteed score improvement, and they provide this amazing flexibility that I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Examples: Verbal Live, Quant Live, as well as GMAT Live. So, in the interest of time, I'll just talk about our verbal courses for a couple of minutes, and then we'll go into the webinar. So our flagship on-demand course, and so any course that ends with the word Pure Play Online is an on-demand course. Our flagship on-demand course is Verbal Online. It's designed for students who are looking to improve their verbal score in 30 days or fewer. It contains everything that you need to as GMAT Verbal. So you get our SCCR, RC, and IR courses. You get full-length mocks. For those of you who are GMAT Club members, you guys get GMAT Club tests as well, and you get an amazing amount of practice. And at $199 with GMAT Club tests, this is an amazing deal, because GMAT Club tests by themselves cost about $99. Verbal Online is also the world's most reviewed on-demand course. It's the only course in the world that has upwards of 500 reviews. So what do you get with Verbal Online? First of all, you get a course which is the most proven course in the world. You get everything that you need to ace, verbal as well as integrated reasoning. You get support for GMAT strategy. You get support for your doubts, and you get the same progressive learning architecture that I talked about. So if you are one of these do-it-yourself kind of students, this is all the support that you need. You get lots of full-length mocks, GMAT club tests I already mentioned, and you get the amazing Scholaranium platform, which is the world's most reviewed assessment platform for GMAT. So preparation, support, and assessments, you get all three. So it's just not the learning that you get with it. The live part of verbal course is called Verbal Live Prep. Verbal Live Prep is built on the foundation of Verbal Online. So you'll really see the first 4 rows over here are essentially identical. In addition to whatever is included in Verbal Online, you also get 36 hours of instructor-led live sessions. Now, how many of you over here are retakers? Let's get a few more responses. But based on those who've responded, about 40-odd%, 45% of you are retakers. For retakers, Verbal Live Prep offers an unprecedented 4-point score improvement guarantee. What it really means is, let's say you've taken the test before and you've scored a V30. With Verbal Live Prep, we guarantee that you'll get a V34, otherwise you get your money back. Even when you have a V36 or a V37, we guarantee that you'll get a V40 or a V41. There's no other course in the world that guarantees a verbal score up to 94 percentile. Not only that, Verbal Live Prep is one course that has actually delivered on that guarantee. When it comes to the ability of the course to deliver on that guarantee, over 99% of the students improve by more than 4 points. It's also the world's most reviewed live course. So we're very fortunate that we have the world's most reviewed on-demand and the world's most reviewed live course. There's no other live course that has upwards of 400 reviews out there. And it is also the course which is responsible for the highest number of success stories on GMAT Club's Share GMAT Experience forum. How does Verbal Live Prep compare? When you look at the duration of e-learning hours, the number of live classroom hours, the kind of guarantee, or the quality of instructors, there's nothing out there that even compares to Verbal Live Prep. Who teaches Verbal Live Prep? 4 out of GMAT Club's top 5 rated instructors teach Verbal Live Prep. This is a typical batch for Verbal Live Prep. We have our next batch starting on 11th of June. We start either with sentence correction or critical reasoning, and then end with a verbal workshop over here. When you look at this, you kind of look at a few things over here. First of all, this course is designed for working professionals, so all the sessions take place on the weekend. All sessions start at the same time, so 7 a.m. Pacific is 7:30 p.m. IST. It is about 3 p.m. I believe UK time. And a typical batch lasts about 40 days or so. Here's the calendar for July batch. We actually start a batch every 20 days or so. Now with that, I've come towards the end of my introduction to e-GMAT, and we'll move right into the GMAT Score Booster calendar. I have a few requests for downloading these calendars. So, regardless of which course you buy from us, there are certain key characteristics that you get of every course. You get a 7-day money back policy. You buy a course, don't like it, let us know. We'll give you your money back within a week. You get the option of painless upgrades. You can start with the cheapest course and upgrade to the most expensive one. You only pay the difference. For those of you who have purchased or who will purchase live courses, you get unlimited access. What it really means is that, let's say you start with the June 11th batch and for some reason you're unable to continue with it. You're welcome to start with the July batch. You don't need to pay anything extra, and you're automatically added to it. Not only that, as soon as you complete your purchase, you actually get access to the recordings of the previous batches. So for those of you who are oil and gas professionals or doctors or in merchant navy, if you want to study at your own pace, the course allows you to do that. A lot of people ask this question. They say, hey, you seem to have these wonderful warranties for retakers, but none for first-time test takers. So while we don't have an official warranty for first-time test takers, we do track the improvement of first-time test takers very, very closely. But 70% of all our students are first-time test takers. And Students who are first-time test takers improve a lot more than retakers. So typical retaker with verbal IPrep, for example, improves by about 7 to 8, between 7 to 8 points on a scale of 60. A typical first-time test taker improves by about 10 points on a scale of 60. Not only that, they improve a lot faster as well. With that, you can join now and attend multiple batches free of charge if you need to. All right, with that, I'm now going to go towards the second part of the webinar. I have a couple of questions that I'll address. So the first question is, do you get all the tools with Verbal Online, or essentially I think the question is more for online courses versus live. Yes, you get all the tools. The only thing that you don't get with online courses are the live sessions. Second, how can you pay if you don't have a credit card? We do have the option of paying through net banking for folks in Asia. You can just write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. With that, let's move to the second part of the webinar. We will take any other questions in the third part. Okay, so we are now officially in the GMAT Score Booster Core webinar. In this webinar, we'll talk about 4 things, as I mentioned earlier: score plateau, the relationship between GMAT and ability. We'll address timing issues, and then we'll combine the learnings from all 3 things to really get the 30-day plan. Now, let's start with score plateau. Okay. In this webinar, I have 2 goals. Essentially, what I want to make sure is that I give you a model for a repeatable and a predictable score improvement. I give you the metrics that you can track throughout your preparation to get this. And what I mean by repeatable is the improvement that is indicated by the metrics also eventually translates into the improvement on the eventual test. And by predictable, what I really mean is that you can really create a plan where you say, if I put in about 30 hours, my score is going to improve by 30-40 points over here, and if I put in another 30 hours, my score is going to improve by another 30 to 40 points. So once you have that model, you have that motivation to work, and once you put in that effort, the improvement will definitely show up. So my goal is to give you that model, and the second goal is to make sure by the time you actually take the test, you are in that mode where you're hitting your maximum performance, your highest performance within the test. Okay. So let's talk about score plateau and what is it, why does it happen, and how can we overcome it. So essentially, by definition, what score plateau is that when you start preparing for the test, you put in the first 50 to 60 hours, your score improves by about 30 to 40 points. But beyond that, or 50 points even that, but beyond that, you actually hit a point, and it happens more specifically in the 620 to 680 score range, where you get into that range, you put in more effort, but you're unable to improve your score. Regardless of whether you put in 30, 40, 50 hours, the score would budge by 10 to 20 points, but not beyond that. So, and as you can really see, this is where score plateau can really happen, and it seems that you're really far away from that target score, which is 730, 740 for most of you who are attending this webinar. So I want to ask you guys, for those of you who put in more than 50 hours preparing for the test, how many of you have experienced this phenomena? Let's get a few more responses. I have about 170 students in the webinar. Okay, so about 77% of you have experienced a score plateau. Thank you very much for your participation. So to understand why you've experienced a score plateau, what I'm going to do is we're going to solve one question, and it's a bold-faced question, and what we're going to really look at is this is a semi-difficult question, but 650, 660 level question, and what we're going to look at as we solve this question is why is it that people make mistakes, where is it that people make mistakes, and we're going to look at the relationship between core skills and score plateau. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to make you solve this question. Let me actually put in a poll where you can put in your answers. And then we're going to analyze how you should have solved this question, and for those of you who made a mistake, where you made a mistake. Okay, so I'm going to give you this question, take a look at it, and and put in your answers over here. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to answer this question. It's a bold-faced critical reasoning question. And the audio is going to go off because I want to make sure that you're able to focus during this time. You only have 20 seconds to go, guys. Put your answers in. Alright guys, time's up. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll, and then very soon I'm going to broadcast the results. But before I do that, I want to make sure we get some answers over here. So I want to understand, how did you approach this question? If you can put in your answers over here. Okay, that's good. I'm going to broadcast the results. You read the question, read the passage first, read the argument. So I'm getting some really good answers. Find the conclusion, sentence structure, read the passage plus pre-think, categorize each statement into facts, claims, conclusions. So that's wonderful. I see a lot of you who've looked at this, have applied an approach which is really methodical towards bold-faced questions. So you guys have an approach in mind which is better than what what students who've taken this, who've attended this webinar before, have had. So I think that's wonderful. Now I will tell you that your accuracy overall, for those of you who've responded to this, is either 26 or 29%. I don't know what the correct answer choice is. It's in the presentation. We'll arrive at it for the right reasons, but you know, the accuracy is less than 30% for this particular webinar. So let's understand how we will approach boldface questions and this particular question. So the way we do it at e-GMAT is we read and classify and understand the argument that's presented to you. When I say read and classify, we take each and every statement and determine whether it's a fact, an opinion, or a claim, which is again essentially same as an opinion, and we kind of understand overall how the argument is structured. Then we officially draw the structure of the argument, and when we do that, we start with the main conclusion and really see how the author arrives at the main conclusion. Then we pre-think what is boldface 1, what is boldface 2, and then we do the option statement analysis. So this is the process that we follow, and this is the process that we're going to follow to as we get to the solution. So let's start with step number 1, where we look at what each statement is and whether it's a fact, and categorize whether it's a fact or an opinion. So let's look at the first statement. Collision avoidance technology is the latest technology to improve safety. So I have a question which is very interesting. I'll really answer that. The question says, if accuracy is okay on unlimited time, how to decrease time to solve a particular question? This is something that we're going to talk about in the third part of this webinar. But one thing that I will really tell you is that if I give you unlimited time, you're not going to be able to answer every question correctly. In fact, your accuracy will not be okay if you don't have the ability. And I'm going to prove that to you. Okay, so let's look at this argument, which says, the first statement says, collision avoidance technology is the latest technology to improve safety of drivers on road. So when you look at this statement, you say what it is. It really is a fact. It's a statement which is written by the author, and the author talks about and introduces this technology, which is abbreviated as CAT, and it says, hey, this technology is the latest technology to improve the safety of drivers on the road. Then the second statement is a purpose statement. You know, you can really see the use of word to over here, to determine the effectiveness of this technology. To means a purpose statement. The purpose was to determine the effectiveness of the technology. A study was conducted by HDLI in various models equipped with technology. Should be on various models over here equipped with technology. So again, another fact is presented. The author really says that there was a study that was conducted. Now, according to HDLI, the technology seems to work well in Volvo cars. So I want you guys to tell me, what is this entire statement? Is it a fact or an opinion? And I'm going to put in a poll question over here. This part, is it a fact or an opinion? There are a few more responses. And guys, the Q&A part below is for asking your questions, not putting in your answers. So so please don't do that. Please don't put your answers over there. All right, so I have the answers. Let me end the poll. We got answers from about 130 folks, but 64% of you think it's actually it's 130 folks, but 64% of you think it's an opinion. So if this were on the GMAT, it would be entirely wrong, but I understand the thinking side, so you're partially correct. This overall statement, starting with according to HDLI, is a fact. Okay. The bolded statement, or the underlined portion over here, where it says the technology seems to work well in Volvo cars, is an opinion. Okay. And what opinion is it? It's an opinion of HDLI. Okay. So I'm sure there are a few of you who are confused over here as to why is it that the entire statement is a fact, whereas the bolded part is an opinion. Let me actually ask this. A few of you are confused. Why is it that the entire statement is a fact versus the bolded one is an opinion? Yes, no? Okay. All right. So let's look at why that is the case. So I'm going to end this poll. So let's define what is fact versus opinion, and we're going to look at this in the context of an argument. Okay. So let me ask another open-ended question. What does critical reasoning on the GMAT test? Very simple. What is critical reasoning on the GMAT test? One word answer. Reasoning ability, logical reasoning, right? So the whole purpose of critical reasoning on the test is to test your ability to think logically with the information that is given to you. All right. And remember that answer as we discuss this, because that's very, very important, especially for those of you who are from India. So let's understand fact versus opinion. A fact is something that can be proven right unanimously. Whereas what is an opinion? An opinion is what someone thinks, a group thinks, or a person thinks. When you say it's 15 degrees outside, it is fact. When you say it is cold outside, it is an opinion. Why? Because different people may have different definition of what cold is. Now let's look at a similar statement, but with a statement which has a similar structure but different content. The statement says, according to Business Week, Wharton is better than Harvard. Okay. So when you look at this statement in the entirety in the context of critical reasoning, this is a fact. Why? Because it's a statement that's given by the author, and the author is telling you, hey, Business Week said something. Okay. Can we dispute that Business Week said something? We cannot. Why? Because in the context of critical reasoning, the goal of the test is to make sure that you're able to validate or invalidate the logic. The goal of the test is not for you to figure out whether the author is lying or saying the truth. In CR, when the author says something, it's a fact. So when you say according to, so essentially in the context of critical reasoning, you cannot dispute this fact that Business Week said something. What you can dispute, however, is what did Business Week really say. You can really say, in my opinion, Wharton is not better than Harvard, or the reasonings for Wharton being better than Harvard can be disputed. That's perfectly okay, because there you're talking about the logic. But because of the very fundamental definition of critical reasoning, you do not dispute authority. Another statement I would really say, which I think you can really probably relate to is, and this is something that I just said. So I'm going to really share a note with you. So if you make a statement, and I said that in some way earlier in the webinar, Rajat mentioned in the webinar that EGMAT is the best test prep company out there. This part is Rajat's opinion. Okay, but this entire so EGMAT is best is Rajat's opinion. But you cannot dispute that Rajat mentioned something in the webinar, or the best, as Parvati said. So you can't dispute that EGMAT that Rajat mentioned something in the webinar. Okay, so this entire statement, if this were bolded, would be a fact. If only the blue part were bolded, that would be Rajat's opinion. Does that make sense? Fact versus opinion? Perfect. For most of you, it makes sense. For those of you who are still confused and want to understand what authority really means, look at the premise and conclusion files in the free trial. Okay. So according to HDLI, the technology seemed to work well in Volvo cars. So just a recap, we talked about collision avoidance technology. The author introduced what the technology is, and then there was a test that was done, or a study that was done by HDLI, and the study said, according to HDLI, according to that study, the technology does seem to work well in Volvo cars. Then let's look at another statement. Then it says, researchers found that individuals driving Volvo XC60, a specific model equipped with this technology, reported 27% fewer auto insurance claims than those driving other comparable vehicles. So again, when you look at this, this is really the reasoning behind this part over here, where HDLI says the technology seems to work well in Volvo cars. So this overall statement, this finding is a fact. Why you can't dispute that the researchers found something. Okay, and when you put this in the context of the argument, you can really say this is the basis or the reasoning for HDLI's claim. Now, this is this piece of information is evidence that is used to back up this claim. Technology seems to work well in Volvo cars. Then the author says, however is a contrast word. It means you're going to go in a slightly different direction. With the exception of Volvo cars, the research so far does not conclusively establish the role of CAT in preventing catastrophic auto accidents. The author over here presents an opinion. Okay, this is his opinion. He says he agrees with the study for the Volvo cars. He agrees with the results for the Volvo cars. He says, however, but with the exception of these cars, we cannot take the claim by HDLI to be generic and to be applicable to all categories of cars. Okay, and one specific thing in the context of preventing catastrophic auto accidents. Why? Mainly because individuals who do have access to these systems possibly do not use it responsibly. So again, the author provides a reason to back up this claim over here. Okay. So this is another opinion that the author provides, and he says mainly because individuals who have access to these systems possibly, okay, you can see the use of the word possibly, then the reason why the author provides this opinion is to support the statement above. I have a question, says, can I please explain the previous opinion a bit more? Is it this previous opinion, Rangarajan? So this opinion over here is author's opinion, and the author says, hey, HDLI has made a claim that the technology seems to work well in Volvo cars, and he says with the exception of Volvo cars, you can't make a generic conclusion out of it. He says, the research does not conclusively establish the role of CAT in preventing catastrophic auto accidents, and he provides his reasoning for why he says that. Okay, overall structure of the arguments so far clear? Let me reopen the poll. Yes, no? All right, pretty much for 97-98% of the people, it's clear. Wonderful, thank you. All right, so let's now draw the logical structure of the argument. And to draw the logical structure, what I want you to tell me is which statement in this entire set of statements is the main conclusion. And you'll see the statements are labeled 1 to 6. Which statement do you think is the main conclusion in this argument? I'm going to put in a poll question over here. I'm going to reduce. I'm going to give you another 20 seconds. Which statement is the author's conclusion? Remember, the main conclusion is the conclusion that is made by the author. Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Now close a few polls that I have and broadcast the results. 68% of you said number 5 is the main conclusion, and you guys are absolutely correct. This is the main conclusion of the author. I have a few folks who also mentioned number 6 to be the main conclusion. While this is a claim, the reason why this claim is put forward is to explain this. Okay, and by definition, the main conclusion is the purpose for writing this argument. If you think about why the author has written this argument, is to really make this point that the research so far does not conclusively establish the role of this particular technology. Okay, this is the main conclusion. Then statement number 6 is another opinion that the author has provided to support the main conclusion. Statement number 3 has the claim by HDLI, and statement number 4 is another piece of fact which is used to support HDLI's claim. Statement number 1 provides the context of the argument, which introduces the particular technology, the CAT technology, and statement number 2 talks about the study, which in a sense also provides the context of the argument. Okay, so having done that, let's now very quickly look at what boldface 1 and boldface 2 are. Okay, the main conclusion says, however, with the exception of Volvo cars, the research does not conclusively establish the role of CAT in preventing catastrophic auto accidents. So, and then statement number 3, and again remember this is from the argument, according to HDLI, the technology seems to work well with Volvo cars. So my question really is, in its conclusion, does the author agree with this claim or does the author disagree with this claim? I'm going to select yes if you think the author agrees with this claim. Select no if you think the author disagrees. Does the author agree with the claim that technology seems to work well with Volvo cars? In Volvo cars? Yes, no. 3, 2, and 1. I have 120 answers, guys. About 70% of you say yes, and you guys are right. It does. The author does agree. Remember the statement over here, with the exception of Volvo cars. Okay. When the author says, with the exception, what he says is, I agree that the technology works well in Volvo cars, but not in others. And then statement number 6. So this bolded statement, what is this bolded statement? It's a claim or an opinion that the author agrees with in the main conclusion. Okay. So that's the first bolded statement. The second bolded statement, we said, what is it? It's an opinion or a claim that the author presents to support. Remember, there's a difference over here. Agrees with and to support are two very distinct terms. So the first bolded statement is something that the author agrees with in the main conclusion. The second bolded statement is something that the author provides or presents to support the main conclusion. Is our pre-thinking with of boldface 1 and boldface 2 clear? Perfect. So with that, I'm going to actually share your results. I'm going to look at how you responded to this. I'm going to tell you what the correct answer is. I believe the correct answer is choice B. So about 23.3% of you marked it correctly. Okay. And again, remember, this is a 650 to 700 level question. If you have started your preparation, you might still be confused. But let's understand why the correct answer is the correct answer. We'll start with choice A. It says the first provides a fact. The technology seems to work well in Volvo cars. Now, is that part A fact or an opinion? Is that part a fact or an opinion? It's an opinion or a claim. So this part is wrong. And then it goes on to really say, and thank you very much guys, whose validity is questioned by the author. Does the author question the statement that technology seems to work well in Volvo cars? No. Both these parts are wrong, and because of which choice A is incorrect. Okay. 15 of you, or about 11% of you, chose choice A. The second part really says the first states a conclusion, and that part is okay. Remember, a claim can be a conclusion, not the conclusion of the argument, but a conclusion. The first states a conclusion. What kind of conclusion? Whose validity is questioned by the question in the argument. Again, the author does not question the validity. The author agrees with the fact, with the claim that the technology seems to work well in Volvo cars. This is okay. This part is not okay, because of which choice C is wrong. For those of you who chose choice C, and it was a very popular choice, is it clear to you why is choice C incorrect? Okay, to most of you it is okay. Again, remember, this is a difficult question. You could, if you're still confused, look at the premise and conclusion files and the boldface files, which are a part of the free trial. Then let's look at choice D, I believe. Choice D again is wrong for the same reasons as choice A. Choice D says the first is a fact. The first is not a fact, it's a claim. That's wrong, and which makes choice D wrong as well. In fact, choice D actually was the most popular choice, and you should have just stopped over here saying, hey, the first is not a fact. I have a question that says, can you please explain why is the first a claim? Remember, what is the first? It's this part which I'm putting in a rectangle over here. The technology seems to work well in Volvo cars. You look at the statement, according to HDLI, the technology seems to work well. So what is this particular statement? It's an opinion of HDLI. Okay, so an opinion is a claim or a conclusion. It's the same category. Essentially, it's the same bucket. All right. Thank you very much for those of you chiming in to provide the answer. That's wonderful. Okay, let's look at choice E. The first is a fact that supports the conclusion refuted by argument. Okay, again, this part is also off. Choice D was off for many reasons actually. Let's look at choice E. Choice E is probably the closest choice they should have gotten to, but only 10.2%. It was actually the least popular choice. The first part of choice E is absolutely correct. The first is a conclusion. Conclusion is a claim. What kind of a conclusion? That the author agrees with. Okay. The second is the reason that goes against that conclusion. Okay. Does the second go against the technology seems to work well in Volvo cars? Does the second go against that? No, it doesn't. Okay, it's very important to know what is that conclusion. That conclusion is boldface 1. Okay, so that part is wrong, because of which choice E is wrong as well. Now let's go to choice B and evaluate that. Choice B is the correct answer. Choice B says the first provides a conclusion. A conclusion is right. That is not disputed in the argument. That is right too. The author agrees with it, which means he doesn't dispute with it. He doesn't dispute that. So this part is correct. This part is correct. Okay. The second provides a consideration that supports the main conclusion of the argument. Yes. Second provides a consideration that does what? It supports the main conclusion. That part is correct as well. I have another question. It says, in a boldface question, opinion and conclusion, do they mean the same? Yes and no. So an opinion is a larger bucket which includes the conclusion. Every conclusion is an opinion. Every opinion is not a conclusion. An argument can have multiple opinions, as you can rarely see in the structure over here. That's a good question, and I'm going to try and move back. If you look at the entire structure of the argument, I hope the presentation has stabilized for you. You have one opinion, second opinion, and third opinion. So every conclusion is an opinion, but every opinion is not the main conclusion. So again, my purpose over here wasn't to teach boldface. We have 10 hours of content on boldface. My purpose over here was for those of you who've studied boldface to some degree to understand why do you make a mistake. And as you can really see, only about 23% of you got it right. Okay. If you want to know more about boldface, look at the free trial. It starts from the very foundation and then goes to the most advanced topics. Now, there's a question, is this an e-GMAT question or an official question? That is, this is an e-GMAT question. It is from our Scholarium platform. And if you want a much more detailed solution, you can download this solution over here in the PDF. Every question in Scholarium has a similarly detailed solution. Okay. Now, the reason why we solved this question was to understand the importance of core skills. Remember, we started with core plateau. The reason why you made a mistake is because you faltered on one of these core skills. right? It could be either one or more of these core skills. If you improve fundamentally, if you improve on that core skill, your overall ability to answer a bold-faced question is going to improve, right? If you improve on these things, your overall ability to, you'd be much more proficient in answering a bold-faced question. And if you become much more proficient in answering a bold-faced question, then your scores would improve. So fundamentally, the reason why you hit a wall, you hit a plateau, is because you lack core skills. Now, a lot of you, I'm sure, knew that you need to improve in boldface prior to us solving this question. However, what you did not know is what are the exact areas that you needed to improve on. And this kind of gave you a framework to figure out what to focus on. Right? You guys agree? Now you know, based on where you made a mistake, what to focus on. So, let's look at the incorrect answer choices and the core skills that are tested. This is choice A. What does it test? It tests the ability to classify an argument and the logical structure. The red piece, the second red piece, validity is question. Where do you get that from? The ability to figure out the logical structure of the argument. Similarly, choice B is the correct answer. So, it tests core skills, but I'm not going to go to it. Choice C tests logical structure and the relationship between the bolded statements. Choice D, ability to classify and the logical structure. And choice E talks about the relationship between bolded statements. So if you made a mistake and if you chose a particular answer choice which was not the correct answer choice, you can really see the core skill that you faltered at. Okay. And as you really see, your performance will improve if you strengthen these core skills. So fundamentally, why did you hit a score plateau? Because you didn't know that you had to work on these skills. Once you know, your score will improve. You will get to that 740, 750, 760 score range. So I'm going to briefly talk about the core skills for critical reasoning as a whole. Okay. The first is identifying facts, opinions, premises, conclusions in the argument. Where what is it? It's about the definition of authority and the definition and understanding the context, whether a statement strengthens, weakens the conclusion. Also figuring out what the main conclusion is something that you need to be able to do. Another core skill, how do you construct the logical structure of the argument, whether it's a predictive argument or a causal argument, the logical structure file and the causal argument files. The ability to pre-think. What does that mean? A systematic approach, a framework to pre-think assumptions, strengtheners, weakeners, etc. before going to the answer choices. Let me actually do one thing. I see you spotted a spelling mistake. Okay, where would you do that? In the respective concept files for pre-thinking. So you'd have assumption, pre-thinking, strengthen, weaken, evaluate, and other pre-thinking files, even boldface and other sections. Okay, you would learn this in application files for each of these subsections, Scholaranium as well as the OG solutions that we provide. The negation and variance analysis, the articles that we've written overall, and also in each of the solutions that are out there. And differentiating facts versus opinion. These are the areas. So again, if you falter in a particular core skill, you know where to go and revise and how to improve. Okay. Similarly, the approach to solving questions, you've got to look at the various modules in strengthen, weaken, assumption, paradox, boldface. Each one of these provide the approach to approaching these questions. It builds on the previous approach that you've learned in the previous module. For example, strengthen builds on assumption, weaken builds on strengthen and assumption, evaluate builds on assumption as well. So as you progress through the course, you build on your core skills. So identifying various answer choices throughout the course, all application files, all practice files that we have, as well as in Scholaranium. Okay. So hopefully this kind of gives you an idea of what are all the core skills that are there in critical reasoning, and how, if you're an e-GMAT student, you can improve on those core skills. With that, okay, I have a question. Someone wants to go back to core skills 1 to 5. You can take a look at it again. You will get the PDF, so it's, even those of you who are watching the recording or who will watch the recording will get the PDF. Will be able to download the PDF from the recording itself. So with that, let's understand GMAT and ability. What's the relationship between GMAT and ability? Okay. But before we do that, I know all of you are motivated to score high. I want to kind of increase that motivation, catalyze that motivation, and you want to score high because you want to get admission to the school of our choices. But one thing that I will really tell you is, as you score higher, your chances of getting admitted improve, as well as your chances of securing a scholarship. There is a school of thought where people think, hey, once you hit that 710, 720 bracket, any further improvement doesn't do a whole lot of good with regards to getting into a certain B school. Actually, data shows otherwise. Here is some data that is collected by GMAT Club, and this is based on inputs by upwards of 3,000 students. So this is very representative data. And what it really says is, at elite schools, the probability of admission, the admission rate, and the article is over here, it says admission rate. What it really says is that as your GMAT scores improve from less than 700, and when it says less than 700, it's like 650 to 700 bracket, to about 700 to 750, till this range, your probability of admission goes up. And you can really see a 2x improvement in probability with each jump. This is the inference verbatim what they really said. He says for 99 percentiles, admission rate at Johnson, Yale, McCombs, Darden, UCLA, Ross are even higher than 50%. And when they did this research, they considered only the top schools in the world, schools such as, INSEAD, Ross, Yale, Kenan-Flagler, LBS, Tepper, Stern, etc., etc. And even schools, Harvard, Wharton, as well as Stanford, actually show an improvement in chances of getting admitted as the GMAT scores go up. The improvement is not up to 50%. If you have 99 percentile, the chances of getting into Harvard, Stanford, Wharton is about 21-22%, whereas if your GMAT's less than 700, the chances of getting admitted is about 7%. If you have any question on this, you're happy to please pose it in the third part of the webinar. I'd be happy to do that. In fact, if there's a question that I can't answer, I'd be happy to take that up next week, since I'd be visiting pretty much most of these. I'd be talking to the admission officers at most of these schools from June 12th to June 15th. I'd be visiting Harvard as well as MIT. So with that, let's talk about GMAT and ability. Okay, why is ability the most important metric when it comes to GMAT? How should you measure it, and how is it embedded in the fabric of the test? So just to really look at this, I want to give you guys a recap of how GMAT works. GMAT's a computer adaptive test. Okay, let me see if I can get a poll question. Yes, here is the poll question. Now, I think everyone over here knows that GMAT's a computer adaptive test, and so what I want you to tell me is, what are the two challenges that you need to overcome a computer adaptive test such as the GMAT? And while you do that, someone asked this question: are these stats for MBA or for PhD? These are for MBA. So, but with PhD, I think you need to really have a wonderful GMAT score. We do have a few students who've actually gotten admission in PhDs, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with them. Okay, what are the two things that you need to overcome to ace a computer adaptive test such as the GMAT? I have 26 answers, 27 answers. I'm going to wait for 30 answers before I go on and explain how the GMAT actually works. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Broadcast the results. Speed, pace, timing, core skills and speed, getting the first question right, timing and accuracy, get difficulty, efficiency. I have answers that are all over the place. Some of them really good, others not so great. Answers that people have just learned and listened to, and probably talk to your friends, and have mentioned it over here. So, two things required to ace the test. So let's understand how the test actually works, and then we're going to infer our results from it. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate the test for two users. We're going to call them case 1 and case 2. Now on the x-axis over here, we have question numbers. On the y-axis over here, we have difficulty level of questions, which what it really means is the higher you go on y-axis, the more difficult is a question. Now, for those of you who don't know, the first question on the test is always a median difficulty level. So this is a median difficulty level question over here. Okay. So case 1, user 1 gets the first question, median difficulty level, gets it right, moves on to the second question. You move up the y-axis, so the second question is more difficult than the first question. Answers that correctly, moves further up, gets the next question, question number 3, which is more difficult than question number 2 as well. Gets that wrong, gets the fourth question, which is of a difficulty level between question number 2 and 3. And you can really see that because if I draw horizontal lines from here and here, you can see question number 4 falls in between those horizontal lines. Okay, gets that right, gets the fifth question, which is of a higher difficulty level, gets that wrong. Now let's talk about case 2 or student 2 here. Student 2 gets the first question wrong, consequently gets the second question, which is of a lower difficulty level, gets that right, gets the next question, which is of a higher difficulty level, gets that wrong, gets the fourth question, which again is of a difficulty level between question number 2 and question number 3, gets that right, gets fifth question right as well. Again, you can see the average difficulty line overall. Now, to most of you, I think it's clear student 1's doing better. At the end of question number 5, student 1 is doing better, right? Yes, no? Most of you agree? Perfect. Now, why is student 1 doing better? Why is student 1 doing better? The answer is there. What's the fundamental principle that student 1's or that because of which student 1's doing better? I have some really good answers over here. As most of you are saying, he has answered questions which are of a higher difficulty. Okay. The fact that he has answered questions correctly which are more difficult gives him more points, which means he's doing better. Very simple thing. If both student 1 and student 2 have identical accuracies, if you look at the stats over here, they have identical accuracy. Both of them have answered 3 out of 5 questions correctly. But for student 1, each one of those 5 questions are either at the average difficulty level, which is question number 1, or above the average difficulty level. Whereas for student 2 or case 2, he only got one question which was at the average difficulty level, and when I say average difficulty level, that was the first question that he received. Okay. So fundamentally, did student 2 even get the opportunity to answer difficult questions? Did student 2 even get the opportunity to answer difficult questions? Yes, no. The answer is no. Difficult questions weren't even served to student 2. Okay. Yeah. This was the only time when he got an average difficulty question, but because of the mistakes that he made, the test did not even throw difficult questions at him. Okay, and that's really, really important to recognize. I'll tell you why. But fundamentally, if you really look at these two cases, there are two inferences that you can draw from it. The first challenge that you have to ace a computer adaptive test such as the GMAT is to get difficult questions. The second challenge is to answer them correctly. Okay, and you know, some of you may be saying, you know, I kind of knew that. So what's so new in it? But I want to make sure you understand the implications of this part over here. Okay. Remember the last time you were studying a particular section, you were at the end of that section and you basically solved a quiz and you said, hey, I solved this quiz and I got 8 out of 10 questions correctly. And you said, it seems I'm pretty good in this section, let me move on to the next section because, hey, we all want to get done with studying for the GMAT. So there's always that temptation to really finish one section, move on to the next section as soon as you get evidence that you're doing well in that particular section. Has anyone faced that temptation to go on from SC to CR, CR to RC, RC to number properties, to algebra, to geometry and so on? Everyone has. At that particular point in time, you've got to remember this to really say, hey, don't move from one section to the other unless and until you're certain that that you have reached a certain ability point. Not accuracy, but ability. Let me ask another question, and I'll tell you why accuracy versus abilities over here is important here. What does the computer adaptive test try and do? What is the adaptiveness of GMAT? What is the purpose of adaptiveness of GMAT? Or what does it try and do? It adjusts the level of difficulty, it finds the level. What kind of questions does it serve to you? What kind of questions does the question picking algorithm serve to you? At your level of difficulty. Okay. Again, there are lots of answers over here as per your level or questions that match your ability. So essentially the questions, and listen to this statement carefully, the questions that the question picking algorithm in GMAT will serve to you are the questions that it thinks you're going to answer correctly. Okay, that according to it are questions that you are able to answer correctly. Right? It's not going to serve questions that are uber difficult. That's one reason why student 2 did not get any difficult questions. Okay. Right? This is a very important point. The reason why student 2 did not get an opportunity to answer difficult questions is because the algorithm didn't think he could answer difficult questions. Okay, pretty much everyone who's responded in the yes no part agrees with this. Okay, so fundamentally what the algorithm tries to do is maximize your accuracy. Okay, the purpose of the question picking algorithm is to maximize your accuracy, and when the algorithm does that, as you take a mock test, if you look at your accuracy, it becomes a pretty useless measure. Why? Because the whole intent of the algorithm is to make sure that you get questions right. So you can't use accuracy as a measure to really evaluate your performance. While you're studying for the test, while you're moving from one section to the other, while you're evaluating the mock test, just because of the nature of the algorithm. You can do that in a standard flat test, not on a computer adaptive test. Does that make sense? It may sound very counterintuitive, but because of the nature, does that make sense? Right? Yes, it does. Perfect. I'm going to show you some data to prove this point. To really say what GMAT actually tests is your ability. Accuracy is not as relevant. So here are two students, very close attempts. Okay, this guy has gotten 9 questions wrong. Let me use a better annotation. Student 1, this is GMAT prep data, not e-GMAT data, data from GMAT prep. This guy has gotten 9 questions wrong in the test. This guy has gotten 11 questions wrong. The thing over here is, beyond question number 10 or starting question number 11 to question number 41, their attempts are virtually identical. It's very little to choose between student 1 and student 2 in this bracket between the two arrows over here. So from starting here to here and starting here to here. Okay. The only difference is this guy got the first 2 questions wrong. And you'll see the magic of computer adaptive test over here. On GMAT prep, student 2 got a verbal score of 32. Student 1 got a verbal score of 43. Okay. 43 on the GMAT is 97 percentile on GMAT verbal, which means out of all test takers, what essentially the test told him was, hey student, your rank is 7500. So out of all the test takers who take the test within a year, it's about 250,000 people, you are at the same level or better than the top 7,500, at the same level as the top 7,500 students. Or what it really means is you're better than 97% of the students who've taken the test. This guy, who got from an accuracy standpoint just 2 more questions incorrect, was at 65 percentile. What it really means is that there were 87,500 students who were at the same level or better than him. If you look at pure play accuracy, the difference is just 2 questions. If you look at ability, the difference is tremendous. Okay, so accuracy, if you just measure accuracy between mock tests, it's a very futile exercise. What you need to measure is ability. Now both of these students are EGMAT students. Both of these attempts were a week before their actual test. Student 2, this guy over here, this guy over here, oh, where did my annotation go? This guy over here ended up getting a V35. This guy ended up getting a V44. So the ability measure was very close to the actual performance on the test. Okay, so hopefully this tells you I have a question. What if the second guy had gotten the same number of correct answers as the first guy? What score would he have gotten? Even if had he gotten the same number of correct answers, he probably would have still gotten a V34 or V35. Okay. The reason why that is there, and again, you're trying to get to, you can actually model this on this particular simulation that we did and figure out why this happened. Let's model student 1 and student 2 over here. You can really see why this is happening. Okay, we're going to start with student 2. Student 2, and I'm going to put in a brighter color. Student 2 got the first question, medium difficulty level, got that wrong. Got the second question, which was of a 30 percentile level. He got that wrong as well. Got the third question, which is of a 10 percentile level. He got that right, then got the next question right, then got the next question right. But because he got a 50 percentile question wrong and a 30 percentile question wrong, one after the other, the question picking algorithm did not advance the difficulty level of questions as quickly as it did for this guy over here who got the first question right, the second question right, the third question right, the fourth question right. By the time he was getting the fifth question, he had already reached the 700 level. Eric says this goes against what the GMAT company tells us. He says I think he means to really say this goes against what the GMAT tells you, that the first 10 questions do not significantly impact your score. There's a lot of research done on it, by the way, and I'll tell you what that GMAT chooses to word to really state these very, very carefully. What it really says is every question in the first 10 questions, and starting with the word every question, every question in the first 10 questions is no more valuable than the question that appears in, at question number 20, 21, 22, 23. What essentially they're saying is that if you get a difficult question in the first 10 questions, it's going to give you as many points as would the same question give you if it appears in question number 21 to question number 30. Okay, and which is true. At a question level, they're the same. What they don't really tell you and what they would never agree to is how their question picking algorithm is trained. They won't really tell you that a majority of the decisions made by the question picking algorithm are made in the first 10 questions. They will not, because they cannot. Because you can't build a computer adaptive test. And fundamentally, GMAT's right in building a computer adaptive test this way. Why? Because if you've done poorly in the first 10 questions, if your ability in the first 10 questions is 30 percentile, starting question number 11, question number 12, question number 13, your ability cannot go to 90 percentile because, humans don't change that fast. You're not a Superman. The only reason your ability will change from a 30 percentile after the first 10 is A, if you're cheating, or B, if there's a computer malfunction, both of which, are not relevant cases over here. Having been someone who actually has designed algorithms during the first 10 years of his life, I can tell you every computer adaptive test works this way. There's no other way you can build a computer adaptive test. In fact, every predictive algorithm, and if you think about the question picking algorithm, it is a predictive algorithm. It's trying to predict what kind of question you're going to throw next at it. Works this way. Whether it regards to figuring out the signal strength of your cell phone and which channel to choose in Wi-Fi, or whether it regards to predicting which movie you're likely to watch next. The fundamental principles of predictive algorithms are very similar. Okay, so essentially what the GMAT tests is ability, and ability is basically embedded in the fabric of the test. You can really see. Now remember this, ability is what? Your comparative rank. When I say you have a 30 percentile ability, it means that of all the test takers who take the test, you are at 30 percentile, and you're going to really see it, how it's embedded in the fabric of the test. So when you think about GMAT, you're really concerned about that score out of 800. But essentially what you don't realize is that score out of 800 is composed of about 8 core components. It's your SC, CR and RC abilities, or your ranks, which lead to a verbal score. And on the quant side, you have algebra, arithmetic, geometry, word problems, and advanced topics such as sets and all of those. So those 5 sections. All of those 5 abilities combine and lead to a quant ability. Both quant and verbal abilities lead to your overall GMAT score out of 800. And the reason why I say ability is really built into the fabric of the test, because if you think about it, your GMAT scores are percentile. When you score 760 out of 800, it's 99 percentile. When you score 700, it's 89 percentile. Over here, this is a percentile. When you score a V32, it's what's close to 60 percentile in verbal. When you score a Q50, it's 87 percentile. Okay, so everything has a corresponding score out of 100. Similarly, for those of you who've seen enhanced score reports, your SC, CR and RC abilities are also percentiles. Okay, you get the score out of 60 for them, you also get the corresponding score out of 100. I'm going to really see this, I'm going to really show this to you. So fundamentally, what GMAT tests, what the score out of 800 is built on is your ranks here, 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 and here, and so forth. Okay, so to ace the GMAT, you've got to get higher ranks at this grassroots level. This isn't something that we've cooked up. Here's a sample enhanced score report from GMAT Prep. You can also get that from GMAT. What you really see is this person has scored a verbal score of 32, which is equivalent to a 64 percentile ability. You actually change the annotation to black, which is equivalent to a 64 percentile ability over here. And the reason why this guy got a 64 percentile ability is because this person got a 94 percentile ability in sentence correction, which is a great ability, just a 55 percentile ability in critical reasoning, and a 40 percentile ability in reading comprehension. These 40 percentile, these numbers translate to the numbers on the left hand side over here. Can you really see how ability is now embedded into the very fabric of the test, even at grassroots level? So when I talked about GMAT Planner early on, someone really said, hey, what's the basis? And it doesn't provide you enough information. The basis of that is such score reports. We have upwards of 500 enhanced score reports, not just from GMAT Prep, but from real tests that went into creating that tool. And then we put in our algorithm knowledge, reverse engineer how the abilities work, and that's why we built this tool. You're going to really see how you can use this tool to create and craft a GMAT strategy. Again, zoom into the same piece. The scoring out of 60 is equivalent to the scoring out of 100. Okay, there's one-on-one parity for every score out of 60. There are a few other things to note over here. Let me ask this. If you were the student and if you wanted to go from V32 to V40, what would you work on? RC. Someone said SC. No, there's really no headroom in SC over here. You know, there is very little headroom over here in sentence correction, but there's a lot of headroom in critical reasoning. There's a lot of headroom in reading comprehension. Okay. So when you look at this and you say, I have V32, the first thing you would do is you say, let me take one section, let me take critical reasoning and improve my ability from 55 percentile to 70 percentile. Just merely doing that would improve your overall verbal score from V32 to V35. And then you would really say, let me then improve my reading comprehension ability from 40 percentile to 70 percentile. Doing that would get you to very close to a V40, which is 91 percentile. By the way, if you're strong in quant, a Q50 V40 will take you to a 730 or a 740 and you are done. I have a couple of questions. This is, how do we check the score in GMAT Prep? I'm unable to access the same. You know, GMAT's very cunning with regards to this. To get this property in GMAT Prep, you have to buy the exam pack 1. When you buy the exam pack 1, they unlock this ability for all tests. If you're unable to do this, Nitish, then you probably have not purchased GMAT exam pack 1. So fundamentally, for this guy, there's very little benefit for working on sentence correction. There's a lot of work required in RC. Okay. So fundamentally, takeaways: your overall score is dependent on your abilities in these individual sections. Okay. And your score out of 60 is the same as the score out of 100. Okay. The best way to improve: figure out where you lack, where your ability is low, and improve on it. So I want to ask a question to all of you. Prior to listening to this webinar, how many of you thought about getting a predictable score improvement in this way? Hey, to go from 700 to 760, I need to do these things. How many of you thought about improvement in this particular manner prior to to listening to this webinar? Not now, but prior to listening to this webinar, how many of you thought about it in this way? Let's get a few more responses. I have close to 150 students in the webinar right now. Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. But 57% of you, some reason my poll results got, but 57% of you really said you did not think about it in this manner prior to listening to this. But, and again, the same model applies everywhere. I'm going to end this poll. But can you really see that this is a very, if you understand this, you can plan your preparation and plan your improvement strategy, right? Perfect. I have a couple of people who are really debating on the first 10, the last 10 questions in the Q&A pod with Devesh. I think the core point which I want you guys to take away is that you have to build ability. You can spend all, if you don't have ability, let me be very clear, if you do not have ability, you can spend all the time on the first 10 questions. You will not, and I'll say again, you will not get them right. Spending more time on a particular question is not a substitute for ability. Okay. There is no shortcut but to build ability. So let's examine ability. What is good ability? If you're a non-native, if you're preparing for one particular section, make sure you hit 70% ability in that section before you move on to the next section. The reason why I say 70% ability is for two things. If you hit 70% ability in all three sections, you're likely to get to a V36, which means if you have a Q49, Q50, V36 will give you a 710, 720, which is a really great score to begin with. Then you can focus on improving. The other thing is, once you hit 70% ability in a particular section and you move on to the next section and you come back to that particular section a month down the line, because you already studied that to 70% ability, you take very little time to really resume that and go from 70 to 90%. On the other hand, if you studied sentence correction and if you left it at 40% ability, you went back and tried to do it again, you'll have to resume the entire prep. That first stage of prep is going to go waste. So I have a question. How do we check section-wise ability frequently? We're going to discuss that. So the overall strategy is take a section, master it, and then move on to the next section. By the way, if you hit 80% ability in all sections, you get very close to a V40, which is 90 percentile on GMAT verbal. So what's the way to prepare efficiently? If you're a first-time test taker, start a section. You're likely to start at 30% ability, prepare to 90%, prepare to 70% ability. Let's take an example. Prepare for the sentence correction course, evaluate your ability, isolate the areas that you need to work on, go back, work on those areas, evaluate the ability again, and iterate on this process till you get to that 70%. And most people do this twice and are able to get to 70%. Excuse me. If you're a retaker, and with a starting verbal score of greater than 30, you're likely to start with an ability of 50%. Same process. The only difference is in this case, because you've already prepared for SC, you started evaluating your ability, isolate your weakness, and then focus on your weakness and go back, evaluate your ability again and iterate in the same way. Very similar process, except that you don't have to do this initial step because you've already done some of this initial step. So most of this part for you is done over here. So there are some challenges while implementing this plan. First of all, the thing really is, how do you figure out what your current ability is? The second is, how do you consistently evaluate your ability? One option is take GMAT prep exams. A, they cost a lot, $100. B, You've got to do well in every section to be able to get a realistic estimate of ability. They're not designed to predict individual abilities. And the third thing, who wants to give a 4-hour exam just to get an ability in sentence correction? That's not fair, not a good use of time, not a good use of money. Then the third thing is, it doesn't tell you why your ability is low if it's low. What are the areas that you need to work on? To do that, you can get a private tutor, or if you are an EGMAT student, you can use Scholaranium. Scholaranium is a tool that is built on ability. It has ability at its core. We have ability quizzes that you can take in SCCR, RC, and various sections in Quant. You get your ability scores overall. Once you get a certain score, it also tells you where you're lacking. So you can do a further drill down and you can get your scores in subject, verb, parallelism, comparison, and modifiers. And for this guy, he can really see that the two areas that he needs to work on are parallelism and comparison. If he improves this piece and this piece, his sentence correction ability can go from 53% to 70 to 80%. Okay. Scholaranium is the world's only tool that's built on the foundation of ability. And why is it? Because we understand this is how the GMAT's built up. In fact, it's the only tool that, Scholaranium was just introduced in January of 2015, and it is much higher rated than either Manhattan GMAT tests or Veritas Prep mock tests. So, how do you get to a predictive way to ace the test? First of all, you've got to figure out what's the best way to get to your target score. What is your target SC ability, your target CR ability, your target RC ability, your target algebra ability, your target ability in arithmetic. Then you've got to have a way to evaluate where you're currently lacking. Okay, what all stuff do you need to work on? Then you've got to look at building those core skills, and then you've got to have a way to evaluate whether you've actually improved or not. What tools we have to help you do that? GMAT Planner is a tool to really figure out the best way to get to your target score. Scholaranium tells you where you're lacking. The EGMAT courses teach you the core skills to improve on those areas. Then you can go back to Scholaranium to evaluate. So this entire thing, the entire round tripping is a set of tools that only we've prepared. If you go to any other place, you're not likely to get either this or this. You're going to get some of the learning part, but not the same way. So you get all the tools you need from starting your preparation to reaching your target score. So with that, let's now move to the third part of the webinar. Let's understand timing. Okay. So a lot of you've talked about timing as an issue. Let me ask another poll question. How many of you have a timing problem? Let me clear all answers, get a yes no question. How many of you think you have a timing issue? Let's get a few more responses. All right, perfect. About 86% of you think you have a timing problem. Okay, let me end the poll. I'm going to show you a scenario. Okay, and in this scenario, I'm going to address the question, why does it take us long to answer a particular question? I'm going to take an example of a critical reasoning question. I'm going to look at two approaches, two students. At EGMAT, here's how we answer an assumption question. We read and understand the argument, we build a logical structure, we pre-think the answer, and we evaluate the answer choices. Now there are two students who apply or who use two different approaches to answer this particular question. Student 1 understands the argument. It takes about 45 seconds to do so. Then spends another 15 seconds pre-thinking the answer. And because the person has pre-thought the answer, the person takes about 15 to 30 seconds to figure out which the right answer is. Student 2 does not do pre-thinking. Okay, student 2 reads the argument quickly, change the color, then goes to choice A to evaluate whether choice A is correct or not. Goes back, reads the argument again, goes back to choice B to evaluate whether choice B is correct or not. Reads choice C, goes back to the argument to see whether that's correct, comes back, reads choice D, comes back and does the same thing with choice C. This particular back and forth leads to a lot of mental friction. First of all, how many of you identify yourself with student 2? I have lots of answers. People have answered very quickly and they're saying yes, completely. Now, I'm going to end this poll. Is this a timing problem? Is this a timing problem? Not really. No, it's not a problem with timing. It's a problem with your process. The outcome is that you're taking longer to answer the question. This is not a timing problem. Remember it this way, okay? When you think about timing, timing is never a cause. It's always a symptom that something's wrong. All right? The 80% of the time the problem is lack of process. The other 20% of the time the problem is that you see a question that throws something at you, that throws a structure at you that you haven't seen before. And so that is a genuine problem which can be addressed, but that's a problem with a certain aspect of the core skill. But 80% of the time, the problem is process or lack thereof. The reason why you take longer to answer a question is because you do back and forth. The reason you do back and forth is because you don't comprehend what you're doing in the first place. Imagine a scenario where you had no immune system. Imagine a scenario that does this, okay, in which you had no immune system. If you actually had a fever in that scenario, then the problem is not that you've had a fever. The problem is the underlying virus or bacteria that's causing the fever. Fever is a symptom, it's not a cause. Okay. Similarly, common cold is not a cause. Common cold is a symptom of the fact that you have viral infection or you've been infected by a virus. Is that clear, guys? When you see you have a timing problem, when you see you take longer to answer a particular question, figure out what's causing that back and forth. Address that. The timing problem will go away. The second thing, and I see this with lots and lots of people who do this, who teach GMAT part-time, where what people really think is that GMAT's a test of speed. It isn't. Why would a test that's designed to make you better managers, better leaders, better logical thinkers test you on speed? GMAT is a test of careful and logical approach. That's all there is. If you have a good approach, if you focus on your core skills, you will never have a timing problem on the test. The reason why you'll have a timing problem is because you're not following the process. And there's something that I'll tell you, there are EGMAT students who have a timing, who actually don't finish the test on time as well. There are some students who do that. The reason why they don't finish the test on time is because when they go into the test environment, they forget the process. Also, the reason why our success rate is 5 times higher than that of any other test prep company in the world is because our students follow the process, is because we emphasize so much on the process. You forget the process, everything goes haywire. Another very important metric that you need to calculate throughout your preparation, as well as know while you are in the test, is a metric called tuck time. It's an e-GMAT defined metric, but it's a super important metric. What is tuck time? Tuck time is derived from a German word called Tuckzeit, which translates effectively to cycle time. For those of you who don't know a whole lot about Germany, Germany is a country which is whose economy is very dependent on heavy manufacturing. Historically, Germany has been very good in manufacturing, and to manufacture a product, you actually do it on an assembly line where you really manufacture the product in multiple steps. So what is tuck time? Tuck time is a time that sets the pace for that manufacturing. It's the amount of time required to finish one cycle in an industrial facility, or one step. What is tuck time on the GMAT? Tuck time on the GMAT sets the pace for answering questions. Okay. What is tuck time? Tuck time is the time required to answer a question of a particular type correctly. Correctly being the word in caps over here. Why is it important to basically know your tuck time? Let me ask a yes/no poll. While taking a mock test, how many of you have ever fallen short on time? Yes, no, on the top. While taking a mock test, how many of you have rushed towards the end? How many of you have rushed through questions towards the end? But 90% of you, okay? When you have less time, and you have more questions to answer. Let's say you have 15 minutes and 10 questions to answer. What is the natural tendency that you have? If you have 15 minutes, you have 10 questions to answer, you try and answer every question quickly. Am I correct? Right? You try and say, oh, let me just try and answer those questions very quickly. When you do something like that, that is the worst decision you can ever take. Why? Because each one of you has this natural time to answer a particular question called tuck time. And when you try and answer questions quickly, your accuracy on that particular question type precipitates. Here is some data over here. If for a question of a particular difficulty, your accuracy is 80% in a minute 45, if you try and take 20 seconds off that particular question, your accuracy can go down from 80 to 50%, which is really bad. In the scenario that I talked about, you have in the last 10 questions, if you have 15 minutes, I would randomly mark 2 questions and give myself 15 minutes for the remaining 8 questions. You would do much better on that test. I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 times. And let me show you some data to do that. But here is, before that, how is it that tuck time and accuracy, how are they related? Okay. So here is how tuck time and accuracy are related. Higher you go on y-axis, higher is the accuracy. As you spend some time on the question, your accuracy improves. Okay. You get to a point which is called the tuck time zone where the accuracy is maximum. Okay. And then you can really see how the curve tilts over here. This is kind of the start of tuck time zone. As you continue to spend more time on that particular question, you get into that self-doubt zone and the accuracy goes down. And it doesn't go down as much, but if your peak accuracy were 80%, it will go down to probably 61, 62%. Okay. Remember I made that statement? Well, let me first ask this other question. How many of you have been in this self-doubt zone? Where you try and solve the question, you mark the right answer, and you say, let me revise that. You revise that and then you mark the wrong one. Right? So this exists. What it really means is, if you try and spend an unlimited amount of time on the first 10 questions, you're likely to not do well because you'll get into that self-doubt zone. This first zone over here where the dotted lines are, I call this the disaster zone. What it really means is, you take 15 to 20 seconds out of your tuck time zone, you get into a disaster zone, your accuracy will drop to half of what it used to be. To prove this, I'm going to actually show a case study. I'm going to share a file with you. That's a score report of a student who's gotten a V35 on a Manhattan GMAT test. Okay. Click on this file and download it. I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to download this file. Select yes once you have the file on your PC or your tablet. Okay, I'm going to get some water while you do that. Okay, I have 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's get to 20 students who have this at least. That way you'd be able to participate. All you have to do is select the file and click on download files. Okay. We have about 29-30 people who have it. Perfect. And you can continue to download files. But essentially, I'm going to talk about another term called total productive time. It's the amount of time spent on answering questions correctly in the actual test or on a mock test. Okay. So essentially, if you think about it, right, you get 75 minutes on verbal, 75 minutes on quant. The best way to ace the test is make sure you spend all the time answering questions correctly. So let's evaluate this guy as an applicant with a mock test score of 35. If you think about this guy answered 23 questions correct, or 18 wrong, verbal section again. He spent 41 minutes and 20 seconds answering the questions correctly. His average time per correct question was a minute 42. His average time per incorrect question was a minute 52. When I look at this part over here, average time per correct and average time per incorrect, they're very similar. In fact, when the average time per incorrect is higher than the average time per correct, it kind of tells me that if the person struggled with timing, the person did not randomly answer any questions. He tried to answer every question. Another thing that you would really notice is that he was 8 minutes behind by the time he reached question number 22, and he had a huge percentile drop from 98 to 78 percentile. Okay. Now let's go do some further analysis, and this is where I think it will really hit you the importance of tuck time. Let's split his entire attempt into two different sections, the first 20 and the remaining 21 questions. Remember, throughout this verbal section, he's the same guy who's taken the test. Okay, he's a human. Humans their abilities don't precipitate right away. For the first 20 questions, his overall accuracy is 14. Now, for those of you who have the file, I know a few of you don't, can you see that he got, out of the first 20, he got 70% of them right? Can you see that? Yes, no? No Excel versus? Okay. Perfect. He spent 42 minutes and 14 seconds answering those questions correctly. So his total productive time out of those 42 minutes was about 29 minutes. Okay. And his average time spent per question was 126 seconds on an average. Now you have tuck time for SCCR and RC. I'm just doing tuck time for verbal section as a whole. His average time spent per correct question was 126. Per incorrect was very similar. Again, he didn't make choices. Now let's see what happens in the next 21 questions. How many questions did this guy answer correctly in the next 21? How many questions did he answer correctly? 11, no. He answered 9 questions correctly in the next 21. Okay. He had a total of 32 minutes to answer 21 questions. So he had less time to answer 21 questions. He spent 42 minutes to answer the first 20. He had 32 or 33 minutes almost to answer the remaining 21. Out of those 33 minutes, he only spent a third of that time, about 11 minutes and 43 seconds, to answer that question correctly. His total productive time was 40%. His total productive time over here was 70%. His average time spent per question was 94 seconds. Can you really see when you reduce the tuck time from 126 seconds to 94, how his accuracy goes down? Can you see that? Same test, first 20, last 21. And by the way, go back, look at the mock tests that you've done. If you rush through the test, you will see evidence of the same thing happening. Okay, this is what I call as committing harakiri while during the test. You can have the best ability in the world. If you do this, you're gonna not get a high score. So fundamentally, this guy would have done a lot better had he answered 3 questions incorrect. Had he randomly guessed on 3 questions in the last 21 and focused his energy on the remaining questions, because this guy had really good ability. So the question then is, hey, tuck time is important. I've got to figure out what is tuck time, what is my total productive time, how do I measure it? We measure it in Scholar name for you. You can really see tuck time over here for every quiz, and then overall we measure that. We also measure your total productive time in every ability quiz and in every other quiz. Also throughout the course we measure your tuck time as well. Here is a guy who improved from V37 to V40 by leveraging tuck time, just by leveraging tuck time. Okay, he's not an EGMAT student. All he did was attended this webinar. So there's a video from EGMAT that introduced me to the idea of tuck time. Tuck time is the optimum time that an individual needs to mark a question of a certain type. Then he says there is a school of thought that suggests that you must get SC questions correct in 1 minute. So this verbatim, so there are some mistakes that he made. In my case, this strategy did not work. After I got introduced to the concept of tuck time, I observed that 1:30 is the average time I needed to mark an SC question correctly. I improved only marginally on that timing later on through practice. In my actual test, he took close to 1:20. Okay. He said, however, CR was my strength, and I observed that I only needed 1:45 to answer there. Okay. So this guy never got a V40 in his marks, got to know about the strategy just before his exam. Okay. Applied the strategy and got a V40. V37 was the highest that he ever scored. Okay. Says the bottom line is that there's no one size that fits all when it comes to timing strategy. There's no point compromising on accuracy on questions where you tend to be naturally slow. Tuck time is personal to you. That's why you've got to know that. Improve timing where it can be improved only to the extent that is possible without giving up accuracy. So it's an amazing statement. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's something that you need to know. You can't just rush through questions on the test. Your ability or your tuck time is not going to improve during the test. You have to be aware of it. So overall, the recipe for success on the test: build your ability. How do you build your ability? By building your core skills. And make sure while you are in the test, you spend enough time to answer questions. That's how you will reach that 750 score. You falter at one place, you're going to falter in the test. Does that make sense? Yes, no? Is this useful, guys? I mean, I've been talking about these. Do these metrics make sense to you? Is this useful? So now we come to the last part of the webinar, where we're going to bring everything together and we're going to craft this 30-day plan. Remember, we started with core skills as we did the boldface question. We kind of realized that if you lack in core skills, you're going to make mistakes. So if you realize the core skills that you lack in, you can fix that. You can overcome that score plateau. Then we talked about timing. Then we talked about ability, and we said GMAT tests ability. It's really important to have ability at to have multiple abilities. because essentially your GMAT score is a combination of your abilities in sentence correction, critical reasoning, reading comprehension, and number properties, algebra, word problems, and so forth. Then we said timing is nothing but a symptom. The problem is generally process. And then we define the metrics on tuck time and total productive time. Now let's combine everything to create this 30-day plan to go from 6:30 to 7:20, 7:30, and so on. By combining everything, by combining all the tools, all the metrics. So when you want to go from 6:30 to 7:30, the most important step is to set your quant and verbal scores. Okay, let's assume your target score is 720. Okay, you've got to define your target quant score, your target verbal score. Anyone who tried GMAT planner? Anyone of you who's here yet? Yeah. What the first step that GMAT planner does is to help you define your target quant and verbal score based on the strengths and weaknesses that you have. Okay, so with this guy is very strong in quant. So if you put the score in GMAT planner, if you say, hey, I'm very strong in quant, the planner would recommend a Q50, and correspondingly you'll need to get a verbal score of 38. Okay, so then you say, this is my target quant and target verbal score. So the steps that I'm going to follow is I'm going to define my quant strategy, define my verbal strategy, and then go forward. Then I'm going to create a plan for verbal, create a plan for quant, execute on it, and then take mocks, make sure I'm there, and and then take the eventual test and get a 720 and go forward. So let's kind of look at how you do the verbal part, because the quant part is essentially the same tools. Scholaranium does both quant and verbal. Okay. So let's devise a verbal strategy. The first thing you've got to know is where you currently are, and then how can you get to your target verbal score, which is V38. You take a verbal ability quiz in Scholaranium, or if you've taken a mock test, or if you've taken the actual GMAT, you already get your enhanced score report. Let's say you take a verbal ability quiz, and the quiz tells you you're at 50 percentile in SC, 50 percentile in CR, and 40 percentile in RC. Okay, then you really say, okay, this is where I am. I want to get to V38. What do I need to do? Let me figure out. So there are two ways you can really go to GMAT planner and really say, I'm going to do so much in SC, so much in CR, and so much in RC, well, actually GMAT planner is the only thing in the world that tells you today. So you've taken the verbal ability quiz, you actually do 50, you've gotten your current abilities are 50, 50 and 40. You've got to figure out what are the various ways in which I can get to a V38. So there are multiple ways in which you get to a V38. All of these are embedded in GMAT planner that allows you to customize that. So you can really say, I really like SC and I really like CR and I don't like RC a whole lot. So I'm going to work on my strengths. So I'm going to be excellent in SC. So I want to get to 90 percentile in SC, 80 percentile in CR, and consequently you only need to get a 60 percentile in RC to get a V38. So this is something that you can get. Then you can really say, I'm not as good in SC, maybe I'm much better in RC. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first improve my RC to the best that I can. Now remember, when it comes to improvement beyond 90 percentile, I won't bet on it because of the variation in performance that you may have. So 90 percentile or 94 percentile is the highest that we tell you on GMAT planner. Then correspondingly, you only need to work towards 70 percentile in SC and CR. Or you say, I'm going to be excellent over here. In that case, you probably don't even need to study for CR because you're already at 50 percentile. 3 different ways, 3 different strategies. GMAT planner gives you all of them. Okay. GMAT planner is actually, some people are saying, can I try GMAT planner? I'm going to actually you guys can try it right now. The link that was there was there. You can click on this over here and you can try it. So I'm going to really say let's choose this approach because I really like SC. I'm decent in CR, but I don't want to do RC a whole lot. So why is it important that you decide how do you want to go about doing this? Why is it important to decide one approach versus the other? Can you guys tell me? And the link is there in session PDF as well, guys. So don't worry about it. GMAT Planner is something that we want to release to the world. It's not something that's just for e-GMAT students. Here is the link, guys. You guys can really look at. I'm going to get you the link while. Here is the link. Okay. Question is, why is it important to decide how do you get to that V38? Because you want to have a plan. Because you want to know where you want to work on, because you want to sequence your studies. Okay. So, and how do you decide? You want to make sure you leverage your strengths and you sequence the studies. So, how do you create your plan for verbal? You figure out the first question that you ask is, what is the major source of improvement? And this guy is aiming for a 90 percentile in SC. And then an 80 percentile in CR. So SC and CR are the major sources of improvement. So then the question becomes, should I start with SC or should I start with CR? Since you're aiming for a higher percentile in sentence correction, I would say start with SC. Okay. The other piece is there's this natural progression where if you improve in sentence correction, your sentence structure skills improve, you read the arguments better, you're able to build logical structures in a much better way. So there's a relationship between core skills in sentence correction and core skills in critical reasoning. So the first thing you do is you're going to improve your SC ability from 50 to 90. Then improve your CR from 50 to 80. Then you're going to pick this last section and having improved in SC and CR, your RC ability is almost going to be there. Okay, so you won't need as much effort to go from 40 to 60 in RC. Probably 2 to 3 days, no more than that. So this is your high level plan. Now let's put that plan into execution. Okay. Now, does this look a lot more organized with regards to a plan than you would have just gone if you were starting at V30 or a V28? Does this look like you have a plan? First do this, then do this, then do this. You have the metrics to track, right? Okay, so let's see how you execute that plan. You have 30 days, remember? Day 1 to day 7, you at 50 percentile, learn SC. Okay, then you take an SC ability quiz. Just hold on one second, guys. Then you take an SC ability quiz. Okay, day 8 to day 10, take SC ability quizzes, custom quizzes, figure out the areas that you still need to work on in SC. Go back to the course and revise those areas. And so basically ability refinement studying happens over here. At the end of day 10, because you have 10 sentence correction ability quizzes in Scholaranium, in addition to that, a lot more questions and the analytics, they help you isolate and allow you to focus on the areas in the course where you need to learn. You'd be able to get to your SC ability. Then repeat the process for critical reasoning, 11 to 17. Go through the course diligently, follow the study plans that are given to you. Use Scholaranium, do the same refinement plan over here. Now, after you've done with CR, go back to SC for a day. Make sure that your SC ability is still near the 90 percentile mark. Okay. If you need to fix a couple of areas, fix it on day 21. And then, now, let me just go back. Why is this important? Because if you fix SC and CR, you're already at V36 over here, or V37. Then the last 2 to 3 days, study RC. Again, follow the same process. Remember, you're only aiming for 30%, 60% ability in RC. This is how in 24 days you can go from a V27 to a V38. How planned does this thing look, guys? Look at this again. Does this help? Perfect. How many hours each day do I assume? I'm assuming that where you have, that's a great question, by the way. Over here, I assume 2 hours per day on a working day and 4 hours per day on the weekend. Okay, so if you think about, you're doing about 20 hours per day, or over 10 days, you're basically doing about 30 hours. If you study for 2 months, will it lead to greater improvement? Yes, it will. Again, remember, there's a law of diminishing returns as well, but I mean, the time required to score from V40 to V40 to V43 is really dependent on analytics and your ability to target. So here is how you can see the abilities go from 50 to 90, 50 to 80. So SC over here first, then CR, then RC. Okay. Remember, this is for a guy who's starting at 50 percentile ability. Remember, okay, not someone who's starting at 30 percentile. If you start at 30 percentile, you want to do a bit more. So let's now focus on the refinement plan. I'm going to focus just on this part over here because, you know, the rest is very easy. How do you refine a particular section? Excuse me. So first of all, take an SC ability quiz, then take a couple of custom quizzes, and you'll be able to really get this metric, how well you're doing in subject verb parallelism, comparison, and modifiers. For those of you who don't know where to look for it, look at on the skill data screen. Then you say, I really have to focus on comparison and parallelism. You then go back to the EGMAT SC course to revise the content again. Okay. Each of these is about 15 to 20 minutes. So this entire thing can be done in about a day and a half. And remember, you're revising this, so you won't even have to do all of these. Each of these, again, very similar. So you start with, for parallelism, for example, you really start with the foundation. How do you identify and correct? How do you figure out markers in parallelism? Some helpful tips, you do the concept quiz. Now each one of these has a quiz, so you get feedback how well you've learned. Okay. Then you do a concept quiz and you do an application quiz. Then you go to a slightly advanced topic in parallelism in imperfect list. Then we talk about the grammar versus logical aspect of parallelism. You do another application file. Again, all of this is evaluated. Another practice file. Then you do the official questions. If you do it diligently, if you apply the process, there is no reason why you will not ace why you won't ace parallelism. Same thing with comparisons. Very, very similar coverage of comparisons. You do that, you come back, you take a custom quiz only with parallelism, and maybe you can add a bit more of miscellaneous topics over here. Okay. So if you do these two, you take a custom quiz to really see that improvement in comparisons and parallelism, and then once you see that improvement, you can take another ability quiz to see that improvement in ability. Okay. Any questions in terms of executing this plan? Can I repeat the number of hours? I will. Okay. So every study plan that we provide is based on you spending 2 hours per day on a working day, and spending 4 hours per day on a Saturday or Sunday, and we assume that you work or you study 28 hours a month, so we give you 2 vacation days. If you have more time, for those of you who are not working professionals, or if you're working part-time, of course you can do more hours. Tina says I've scored a 660 with a V30, and I have my exam on July 1. Will I be able to finish everything? Yes, Tina, just use the analytics, focus on the study plan. You'd be able to do that much sooner. So, just as a recap, the way to get that improvement is use GMAT Planner to define a strategy. I use Coloranium Analytics to figure out the areas that you need to work on. Use ability quizzes and custom quizzes. Use the EGMAT course to build the core skills, and then go back to Coloranium to see whether you've actually improved or not. And make sure that you've actually improved. Because of the vast question bank, because of the ability quizzes, you can do round tripping over here. The beauty of it is you can even do GMAT Planner multiple times. You already said, hey, I thought I was really good in SC. I improved from 60 percentile to 80, but I can't seem to go from 80 to 90. So can I really just put 80 percentile in SC and then see how much improvement do I need in CR and RC? And then you can move over there. GMAT Planner allows you to do that. Okay. So with that, I've come towards the end of the webinar. The key to executing on this process is make sure you focus. You devise a strategy as target quant and verbal score, which is based on your strengths. Second thing is focus on core skills. Remember, I can give you the best plan in the world. If you don't build core skills, nothing's going to work. Measure your improvement. Evaluate your strengths using analytics. If you do that, you're going to cut your prep time in half. Track and use the ability quizzes. Don't just solve quizzes. Use ability quizzes. Review the answers. Review the solutions that we do to figure out which core skill you're lacking on if you made a mistake. Even when you answer questions correctly, look at our solutions to figure out if you've picked the right answer for the right reasons or not. You know, a lot of people say we provide solutions. A lot of people say we give solutions for every OG question. I can tell you a majority of those people don't come half as close as we do. And then as you improve your knowledge of core skills, you will improve on timing. When you focus on studying, when you're studying and preparing, focus on learning things and focus on doing things well. Don't worry about that end score. The end score will fall in place. So with that, as I said, I've come to the end of the webinar. Take a jump start on your core skills. Take a look at the free trial for both our Scholarium as well as other products. And thank you for being with me during this webinar. Now you guys can go study, get your dream score. Okay, with that, we've come to the end of the webinar. Feedback on the webinar in the short answer poll over here, and also if you have any questions, Q&A pod over here. I'm going to share the session presentation. Here's the session presentation. You guys can download this. Remember, the link to GMAT Planner is also in the session presentation. Also, has a live session calendar. The solution to the first question that we discussed, if you need a much more detailed solution, which is a part of Scholarium. Aditya is asking, how close are our scores to the actual GMAT? Very close. That's one reason why Scholarium is so highly rated on GMAT Club. And you can really see the rating of Scholarium over here. Just hold on. You can see the ratings for Scholarium over here. Okay. Do you have more webinars lined up? Yes, we do. I mean, you can download the schedule over here. Remember, only 20% of our webinars are free. Does GMAT Planner provide study schedules according to various inputs? Not yet. It tells you your target abilities, but in the future we plan to develop this tool. Remember, to develop this tool, we had to build the algorithms, we had to perfect the algorithms, and we had to work with upwards of 500 times 7 data points, and then we had to get that to 99% accuracy along those points. There was a lot of work in the algorithm piece. Once we release this, within a month, we're going to add the plan component to it. A lot of people have been asking, a lot of our students have been asking for this. The reason we can build these tools is because as a 25% company where everyone works full-time just on helping you as the GMAT, we can spend that amount of money in research and development. And for those of you who weren't able to download the score report, you guys can download the score report over here. Arijit says, how can I improve my comprehension? Take the reading strategies to improve your comprehension. Look at the SC course. Let me show you some. Let me share the feedback that people have on the RC course, the reading strategies in the RC course. You guys can take a look at this. Do we have a manual on how to use Scholarinium? Yes, we do. Just Google e-GMAT Scholarinium. We have a very rich set of blog posts on this. Here is the manual on Scholarinium. Oh, you guys can really see this. And again, if you have any questions, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. Okay, the link to GMAT Planner. You can really see, get the link to GMAT Planner over here. Rajesh says, I'm new to GMAT. This is my first video. I want to give 6 months for prep, and it'll be to go back to study. I'll be going back to study after 8 years. How would you study? Rajesh, again, remember one thing. People think they're studying after a long time. They may face issues. What you bring to studying for the test is 8 years of wisdom, 8 years of maturity. Use that maturity. You can start with either verbal or quant. If you start with quant, start with number properties. If you start with verbal, start with sentence correction. That's what I would say. To PM me, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. For those of you, there's a couple of people who really say, hey, I only want to purchase Scholarinium. It seems to be a very useful tool. I would say you need the right strategies to purchase to ace the test, so that come with the course. But if you just want to purchase Scholarinium, we do have an option. You can go into our section for individual courses, scroll down, and you can get quant and verbal Scholarinium. Because of adaptive nature of the test, does V42 mean different percentile depending on where you got from? No, V42 is always, I think it's like 94 or 97 percentile. There are different abilities that can lead to V42. For example, you may excel in let me actually get those abilities for V42 right from GMAT Planner right now while I'm answering this question. But yeah, there are different abilities that can get to V42. But as V42 is always the same percentile. So a V42, well, you can get to V42 if you are at 91 percentile in SC, 94 in CR, and 85 in RC, Or if you really say, I really want to excel in RC, you can, if you can do 95 percentile in RC, 89 percentile in CR, and 86 in SC. So again, remember, V42 means you're 96 percentile overall. All right. Okay, guys, if there are no other questions, I want to thank you guys for attending the webinar today. I enjoyed having you guys as our students. I'm sure Devesh did as well. If you have any questions, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. I and my support team will be happy to help you ace the test.